Bonjour, good day. Thanks for being here. I want to start off by reflecting on the 1 year anniversary of George Floyd's killing. And at the time, what we witnessed collectively was one of the most brutal, widely shared capturing of a black man being killed by police. And it spurred more activism. The Black Lives Matter movement was already a movement, but it spurred certainly more activism, more participation, and people demanding that this stop. And at the same time, we weren't insulated in Canada. We saw that police were responsible for the deaths of Canadians in Canada as well. And so when thousands of people took to the street demanding that something happen, we saw Justin Trudeau go to a Black Lives Matter protest and take a knee, which seems to be all for show, because a year later, and there still has not been any concrete action to deal with systemic racism in policing in Canada. And I want to really emphasize this point. The material conditions for Indigenous or Black or racialized people has not changed. Their experiences when it comes to the police has not changed. So really what Justin Trudeau did, taking that knee, was all for show. This is the Prime Minister of Canada who could clearly take action when it comes to immediately banning racial profiling at the federal level, whether it is ensuring clearly that there's a review of force or making sure if someone's dealing with a healthcare crisis, they don't have armed police officers showing up at their front doors, issuing aggressive voice commands, but a healthcare worker that deals with people in a healthcare crisis. These are changes that could have been done. Justin Trudeau could have done them. But a year later, after that horrible incident spurred so much positive action and activism, demanding for justice, demanding that this end, Justin Trudeau has failed to do that. And I want to note that is wrong. There needs to be action. The loss of life cannot be in vain. It should result in changes and systemic changes to prevent this from ever happening again. On another note, I want to talk today about what we're also seeing as a very troubling new situation arising, which is in this pandemic, while people are still in the midst of a pandemic, there are still millions of Canadians that have either lost their jobs, can't go back to work, or are getting less income than before. There are people that are still struggling. We are still in a pandemic. There's still a lot of volatility. There are lockdowns that happen and people, again, can't go to work. In this volatility, in this uncertainty, in this pandemic, banks have actually made profits. Some of them have made record profits. Despite that people are struggling, despite the fact that they're making profits, banks are increasing banking fees. TD Bank just announced that they're increasing their banking fees in a pandemic. Now, banks are going to try to do what they want to make money, but the federal government has complete power to prevent this. Justin Trudeau could stop this. The finance minister could immediately stop this. We've got powers to cap banking fees. There are significant powers at the federal government to stop this from happening. So why would Justin Trudeau and the finance minister, why would the Liberal government allow banks to gouge people in the middle of the pandemic is beyond me. I have no understanding why they would allow this to happen. So first of all, I hope it's clear in my outrage that this is wrong and this must stop. The finance minister, Justin Trudeau, should immediately come out today and state clearly that it is wrong to increase banking fees in the middle of the pandemic. I can't believe I just said that sentence. I think that would be pretty obvious that it's wrong to do that. But I guess it's not obvious to the banks. So the Prime Minister has to do his job and come out and state clearly, no, you should not be increasing banking fees while we're in a pandemic. It's outrageous and ludicrous. Donc aujourd'hui, je veux toucher deux enjeux. Premièrement, c'est l'anniversaire de la mort de George Floyd. Et c'était un moment horrible, un moment où tout le monde a vu le fait qu'un homme noir était tué par les policiers. Et après cet événement, plusieurs personnes ont demandé la justice. Ça a inspiré un mouvement qui était toujours là, Black Black Lives Matter Movement, mais ils ont continué de mettre la pression pour les changements concrets pour éliminer ce sort de racisme systémique. Et on a vu le Premier ministre fait un geste symbolique dans une manifestation, mais je pense que c'était seulement pour montrer qu'il veut faire quelque chose, mais après 1 an, et il n'a pas pris jusqu'à ce moment aucune action concrète pour vraiment changer l'expérience des communautés autochtones, des communautés noires, des communautés racisées au Canada par rapport à leur interaction avec les policiers. Et le gouvernement fédéral a le pouvoir de faire les changements concrets, d'éliminer la pratique de profilage racial au niveau fédéral, de changer l'utilisation de force, de s'assurer que quand quelqu'un fait face à une crise de santé mentale, une crise de santé, que c'est des travailleurs de santé qui répondent, pas les policiers avec les armes, avec les commandes fortes de voix. Donc, c'est injuste. Le gouvernement libéral n'a pas pris aucune action concrète pour régler la crise, la situation de racisme systémique, et on continue d'avoir des rapports qui montrent que le racisme systémique continue dans la GRC. Il y a un rapport récent qui montre que dans la Nouvelle-Écosse, que les GRC n'aient pas répondu pour répondre aux besoins des gens, de la communauté autochtone, les Mi'kmaq. Donc, c'est clair que le problème continue. Et Justin Trudeau n'a pas fait aucune chose de concrète pour changer la réalité pour les communautés affectées. Deuxièmement, je veux toucher un autre enjeu qui était soulevé aujourd'hui, hier, le fait que les banques qui ont gagné des profits pendant cette pandémie, et plusieurs banques ont gagné des profits records, malgré le fait qu'ils sont dans une position positive, une position de profit, ils ont augmenté leurs frais. Comment est-ce que le gouvernement libéral peut expliquer que les banques augmentent leurs frais pendant une pandémie? Ce n'est pas normal. Et le fait que j'ai utilisé cette phrase que le gouvernement libéral doit dire clairement aux banques que vous ne pouvez pas, vous n'avez pas le droit d'augmenter les frais pendant une pandémie, ça me rend fâché de fait que je dois expliquer ça. C'est clair qu'on ne doit pas faire ça, et le gouvernement fédéral a le pouvoir d'arrêter ça, de mettre une limite sur les frais. Et je demande le gouvernement libéral, Justin Trudeau, le ministre des Finances, de donner une déclaration clairement aux banques qui ne peuvent pas augmenter les frais pendant ces pandémies. C'est injuste et ce n'est pas quelque chose qu'on doit faire. Avec ça, je suis prêt pour vos questions. Merci beaucoup. With that, I'm ready for your questions. Thanks.
And we'll now take questions, starting with questions on the phone. As usual, one question, one follow-up per reporter. Nous allons maintenant passer aux questions. Commençons par les questions au téléphone. Comme à l'habitude, une question suivie par journaliste. Opérateur, avons-nous une première question?
The first question, la première question, is from Louis Bloin, Radio-Canada. La parole est à vous.
Bonjour, M. Singh. Je voudrais vous entendre sur le dossier du bois d'œuvre, le conflit avec les Américains. Il semble qu'il n'y a pas de dénouement en vue entre le Canada et les États-Unis sur la question du bois d'œuvre. Êtes-vous étonné que M. Trudeau n'ait pas obtenu peut-être de coup de main là-dessus de la Maison-Blanche, de M. Biden? Que devrait-il faire, à votre avis?
Oui, c'est un grand problème. Le fait que c'est un problème qui était là depuis des années maintenant, et le gouvernement libéral n'a pas réglé ce problème, c'est absurde, et ça crée des problèmes pour les travailleurs et travailleuses ici au Canada, et ça aussi a des impacts dans les autres dossiers, mais c'est quelque chose qu'on doit régler, et je ne comprends pas pourquoi le gouvernement libéral, Justin Trudeau et le gouvernement libéral n'a pas réglé ce problème.
Qu'est-ce qu'il devrait faire, à votre avis, M. Singh? Prendre le téléphone, appeler Joe Biden? Comment il doit procéder? Qu'est-ce que vous feriez, vous, à sa place?
Ça doit être une priorité et le gouvernement doit agir comme c'est une priorité et régler ce problème. C'est inacceptable le fait que c'était un problème depuis longtemps et le gouvernement libéral était au pouvoir depuis 6 ans et maintenant. Et après 6 ans, ils n'ont pas réglé le problème. Ils ont eu la défense ou l'excuse de Donald Trump dans le passé, mais cette excuse ne passe pas maintenant. Et maintenant, avec une nouvelle administration, le gouvernement libéral doit régler ce problème avec le bois d'œuvre.
Operator, next question.
The next question is from Hélène Buzetti from les Coop de l'information. La prochaine question est de Hélène Buzetti, les Coop de l'information. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, M. Singh. Deux questions portant en fait sur le bloc. D'abord, cet après-midi, il y aura le vote là, sur leur journée d'opposition là, qui demande de reporter l'élection. Je voulais savoir comment votre parti allait voter.
J'espère que ce n'est pas un surpris, que depuis longtemps, on a dit clairement qu'on ne doit pas déclencher une élection pendant cette pandémie. Et c'est sérieux, parce que on est plein milieu d'une pandémie et on a vu que c'est volatile, ce n'est pas prévisible, la situation. On a maintenant une grande crise, une augmentation des cas en Manitoba. Et Manitoba a besoin d'envoyer les gens en Ontario. Donc, c'est vraiment en crise. On a aussi une augmentation des cas à Terre-Neuve et Labrador. Donc, c'est toujours le cas qu'on est dans une pandémie. Et ce n'est pas juste. C'est complètement injuste et pas sécuritaire d'avoir une élection à ce moment. Donc, on est clair. On ne pense pas qu'on doit déclencher une élection. On va appuyer cette motion parce que c'est clair qu'on ne doit pas avoir une élection à ce moment.
Okay. Alors, donc,
en anglais, ils ont demandé en anglais avec la même question et puis je vais répondre à votre suivi. Yeah, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that are going to support this motion from the Blocs to clearly state there should not be an election in a pandemic. Also, something that you would think wouldn't need to be stated, but at the point we're at right now at the federal level, with the cases increasing and the crisis narrowly averted in Ontario, we were at a pretty desperate point at one point in Ontario not too long ago, with cases increasing in Manitoba, in Newfoundland and Labrador, where they've in Manitoba had to send people to Ontario. Things are really bad. And the idea that the Liberal government would rather call an election, the only reason they would do this is because they want to seek power and they're not making a decision in the interest of people. We've been able to get things passed. Government is functioning. We've gotten help to people. The only reason the Liberals would do this is because they want power and they would do this at the cost of people.
Ton suivi?
Oui, alors donc vous allez voter pour, mais ce qui m'amène à l'autre motion que le Bloc québécois a l'intention de présenter quelque part cette semaine, en fait, demander un appui unanime de la Chambre, comme on le voit généralement après la période de questions, sur la question de la Constitution, est-ce que le Québec peut y inscrire tout seul, là, que le Québec forme une nation, etc. Comment votre parti est susceptible de se prononcer sur cette autre demande de consentement unanime? Merci.
On a déjà dit qu'on appuie cette approche. Le gouvernement libéral a aussi, Justin Trudeau a aussi dit qu'il appuie cette approche. Je pense que c'est complètement acceptable qu'une nation déclare que c'est une nation et on a déjà reconnaître que c'est une nation. Donc, c'est un geste important, mais on a déjà l'appuyé. Et aussi, avec la langue française, c'est aussi complètement, c'est le cas, c'est un fait que c'est une nation française. Donc, c'est important de reconnaître ça. On a déjà dit ça. Le gouvernement libéral a dit ça. Donc, je pense qu'il y a beaucoup d'appui déjà par des autres partis pour cette approche.
Opérateur, prochaine question.
Next question is from Catherine Lévesque de la presse canadienne. La prochaine question est de Catherine Lévesque de la presse canadienne. La parole est à vous.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Bonjour, M. Singh.
Bonjour.
J'aimerais poursuivre dans cette même lignée, en fait, pour savoir si, je pense que ma collègue veut savoir précisément, et moi aussi d'ailleurs, est-ce que tous vos députés vont voter en faveur de cette motion qui est présentée par le Bloc là, sur la Constitution canadienne?
Donc, on n'a pas vu la motion spécifique. Donc, quand on l'a vu et on l'a évalué, on peut donner une réponse. Mais ce que je peux dire clairement, c'est une position que j'appuie, mon parti appuie, le gouvernement libéral appuie. C'est clair que c'est quelque chose qu'on doit appuyer et on est d'accord. On est d'accord.
Donc, selon ce que M. Blanchet a dit, là, je comprends qu'on ne l'a pas encore vu tout à fait, cette motion, mais donc elle vise à d'abord reconnaître à ce que le Québec puisse modifier sa section de la Constitution, mais elle vise aussi à demander à ce que l'Université d'Ottawa ne s'occupe plus du programme de contestation judiciaire. Donc, ce serait l'autre élément de la motion. Je me demandais, cet élément-là en particulier, est-ce que vous êtes d'accord avec, considérant là, les récentes controverses qu'il y a eu à l'Université d'Ottawa, est-ce que vous lui faites encore confiance pour gérer ce programme?
Donc, je peux répéter, je n'ai pas vu cette deuxième partie, donc je dois l'évaluer. Mais avec la première partie, j'ai déjà prononcé et je suis tellement clair que oui, le Québec a le droit de déclarer qu'il est une nation. C'était déjà c'est déjà reconnu dans la Chambre de communes. Donc, c'est complètement quelque chose que le Québec peut faire. Et deuxièmement, c'est une nation française. C'est aussi quelque chose qui est clairement le cas. Donc, on appuie cette idée. La deuxième partie, je n'ai pas lu les détails et je dois l'évaluer.
And now we'll take questions from the room. Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions dans la salle. David?
Mr. Singh, good morning. David Thurton, CBC News.
Good morning.
I wanted to ask you about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Would an NDP government be neutral on this issue? And do you think that the current government is neutral when it comes to this conflict?
I would say that a New Democrat government would be committed to achieving peace. And that's what the commitment should be, that the goal should be to achieve peace. And to do that, our position has been very clear. We believe in a two-state solution. And we believe in making sure we do everything possible to achieve that goal so that people in Palestine live with safety and security and peace. People in Israel also have the right to live with safety, security, and peace. And we would be actively doing our part as global citizens to achieve that peace.
But do you believe that the current Liberal government is neutral when it comes to this goal of achieving peace? Or do you think that they lean to one side in supporting the Israeli government when it comes to this situation there?
I think that, and I've made this criticism, it's of course a very, very difficult situation. There's a lot of complexity, but one thing is clear, and I've made this criticism, that the Liberal government continues to sell arms to one side of the conflict, and in doing so, that is undermining the process. That's undermining the peace process. And it also expresses support of the illegal occupations that contravene international law. So that's a specific and concrete step that we can take that would be in line with what human rights activists have said. If we want to achieve peace, we need to apply pressure to achieve it. And that's why we've taken that clear position that is something that the federal government is doing right now, which undermines peace. So that's a concrete example of what we believe is wrong and what shouldn't be happening.
Man?
Good morning, Mr. Singh. Man Hamidi with the Canadian Press.
Good morning.
Have you been consulted on the choice of the new Governor General yet? And how much involvement do you expect to have in this process? And is this enough to remove partisanship from the process of choosing the GG?
So far, I've not been consulted, and I can verify with my team if there's been any specific consultation. But I can speak about something that needs to happen at the federal level, something that if we're talking about appointments, something that I've noticed is a serious problem. At other levels of government, provincially, for example, the selection of any of the commissioners, the environmental commissioner or the auditor general, is done in a process where all elected parties that have status are a part of a committee and have equal participation if you're an official party, and the appointment is made unanimously by all members of the party, all members of the committee, and that means all elected officials that have that are a recognized party. That is a far better system. It's very difficult to inject partisanship when recognized parties are a part of the process. They have equal vote on a committee and they select. I don't understand why the federal government would have a worse process than provincial governments. The provincial government's a better system, fairer system, and to see what happens at the federal level, it's effectively whoever's in government can choose the appointments, very serious appointments like the governor general or the commissioners. That has to change. That is not a fair system. That is not one that protects Canadians. That the commissioners or these legislative positions are going to be just in the interest of Canadians and not be skewed in parties. So I think that's something that I've long considered a problem and should be fixed.
Thank you. On another topic, this morning the Information Commissioner issued a report on issues with the information, with access to information in the Immigration Department. The Commissioner is saying that many immigrants and applicants who want to come to Canada as immigrants are forced to resort to access to information requests to get information about their applications. How do you think this affects the experience of those new Canadians or newcomers to Canada and those who are aspiring, who are trying to come to Canada as immigrants?
Yeah, the immigration system has been fraught with problems, and it is very clearly both the Liberals and the Conservatives that have failed on this front. On a lot of fronts, you've exposed or you've raised a question about transparency and clarity. People don't know the reasons that they are given decisions. There is a very unclear system. The fact that they've got to resort to a freedom of information request, it makes no sense. It should not go that way. So there's been an ongoing problem when it comes to immigration. And even when we look at family reunification, the lottery system was a failure. And now the system where you apply and then within a couple of minutes, all the available spots are taken up. The entire process has been completely flawed in so many ways. We can even go on to the fact that people are selected for their international training and experience, and they come to Canada and that international training experience is not recognized. There's so many problems, and it has to be fixed because we are missing out on the talent and the contributions of Canadians, new Canadians that come here with that international training. The fact that they're faced with all sorts of barriers and challenges and lack of clarity and transparency, all of that is a problem, and it undermines the process, and it makes people feel like they're being mistreated, and they are if they're not getting clear answers and transparency.
And I'll go back to questions on the phone. Operator, do we have a question?
There are no further questions registered at this time. Nous n'avons plus de questions pour le moment.
And David, did you have a...
Yes.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to go back to the situation in Manitoba. Have you spoken with your counterpart, Wab Kinew, about the situation there? And what do you think that Premier Brian Pallister needs to do to improve the situation in Manitoba, as their ICUs and hospital capacity just goes in the wrong direction?
Yeah, we're in constant contact with the Manitoba NDP, and I've got to really shout out the work of Wab Kinew and the Manitoba NDP fighting for workers and for people and fighting for better healthcare. Brian Pallister, like many of the Conservative premiers, came in cutting healthcare and cut healthcare right before the pandemic and during the pandemic, and it has clearly made things worse, which should come as no surprise. When you cut the services that people need, you cut and slash the number of nurses, the results are going to be that there's going to be a crisis in healthcare. Add in a pandemic, and things are even worse. So on that front, Brian Pallister is clearly to blame. People are upset and frustrated, and he is to blame. He has made bad decisions. What needs to happen is making sure healthcare is a priority, following healthcare protocol, public health advice, things that are pretty straightforward, but Brian Pallister has failed to do on a number of occasions. And again, we're encouraging everyone across Canada, follow the health guidelines, follow the protocol, and we need to get people vaccinated. We need to get the communities that are hardest hit vaccinated. But a testament to our Canadian healthcare system, it's great to see that Ontario is stepping up to provide support to people in need. That's the way our healthcare system should work. People should be able to get care across the country. And I'm really thinking about the people in the ICU, people in Manitoba that are struggling. We're hoping that things get better, and we're going to continue to fight to get the help that they need so that they can get better. One concrete thing we know which would work is to improve access to paid sick leave. We're going to continue to fight to make sure that the paid sick leave program that exists federally is improved so people are better off.
Is there anything in particular you want to see from the federal government on this?
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, I think that it is not sufficient for Justin Trudeau to think that it is enough to just secure the dose. First, he failed at that. But the federal government in a pandemic, in one of the worst crises we've experienced in a generation, in our lifetime, in my lifetime for sure, the federal government should do everything possible to help out. And so when we see provinces struggling, we need to step in and provide better help. So whether that's better resources on the ground, better resources with respect to frontline healthcare workers, making sure communities get help when it comes to vaccination, and making sure right now, one concrete thing the federal government can do right now that requires no time, it's something that can be done immediately, is to improve that access to paid sick leave. We know from experts that is one of the highest cases or causes of transmission is at the workplace. Paid sick leave would dramatically help people out, and it's something that we're continuing to fight for. We need to improve the paid sick leave.
And this is all the time we have. Ceci met fin à la conférence de presse. Merci.
Merci, thank you.